I was out in Combine land when you and Stuart Mandel's story on the Big 12 and the Pac-12 came out last week, but there was a lot going on. Mac Rhodes, the Baylor AD, had gone on the radio in Waco and said, well, we're not trying to take any teams from the Pac-12, but I'm paraphrasing here, but basically, if it happens, it happens. And it feels like to me, the longer this delay goes with the Pac-12 not finishing up its media rights deal, the more just oxygen it gives all this other stuff.
Yeah, I think in reporting that out with Stu over the course of last week, I think we both kind of marveled at how, and I'm sure you guys have probably noticed this too, the Pac-12 and Big 12 folks seemingly are living in completely different realities about what's going on here.
Yeah.
And that was kind of our challenge, is kind of reporting from each side of it and trying to put it all together, because on the Pac-12 side, I think there's still like a defensiveness of like, things are not as bad as they seem. This is coming together. It takes time because you have, new bidders here with Apple and Amazon or whatever.
Except the Big 12s didn't take any time at all.
No time at all. Right. That was re-upping with your current partners, which is a simple process. It takes time. Like, if I were to forecast how things are looking as of today, like, don't think it's getting done this week. I think we're probably looking at closer to the end of the month if they get a deal done. So I think that it's a lengthy process, obviously, and that makes it frustrating for some people. But I think the Pac-12 folks still believe like it's going to be a good number. Maybe will it be, more than the Big 12? Possibly not, but good enough, they think. I think that there's still a lot of skepticism that anybody would leave the Pac-12 and the, perceived advantage of academic prestige in the Pac-12, that no president's going to sign off on that over the matter of just a little bit of money if the TV deal is not quite right. And there's kind of that skepticism that, ultimately ADs get pitched on this stuff, but it's the presidents who have to approve, switching conferences. And they, Pac-12 ones certainly view things way more through the lens of academics than athletics. And on the Big 12 side, they're telling a very different story, and I think probably more successfully in terms of really trying to destabilize the Pac-12 and really create some hype around what they're doing, and really, like, I think, and again, this goes like to the fan bases online too. I think it's just like gotten crazy on Twitter, like how I don't know, people are very fired up about this.
I had an Iowa State fan. Somebody had tweeted out what I had told Richard Deitch, our media writer, about the ACC stuff and the ACC TV deal. And I said the ACC TV deal isn't as bad as it's being made out to be, because it's going to pay more than the Pac-12 and the Big 12, but we'll still be far behind the Big 10 and the SEC. And there was an Iowa State fan that's like, no, that's not true, and put up a graphic that had like the Big 12 getting $38 million a year in TV money, which they're not. They're getting 31, and the ACC was 33, but that was the average when the deal was done in 2017 or whatever. Like, the average now of what's remaining on the deal is higher because they're all backloaded. So, like, it's
people are very passionate about this online,
about TV money. Sides. It's strange.
Yeah. And it's on the Big 12 side. It's like, as we reported on Friday, like there's I think renewed optimism that they have a chance to land the four corner schools, and that no matter what deal George Kliavkoff can put together, I would imagine Brett Yormark is prepared to argue it's not good enough, and that they're better off in the Big 12, and that he has a better vision for the future here than the Pac-12 does. And so they're continuing those conversations, and I think these next few weeks are going to be really critical. And obviously there's lots of stuff that will happen as a result of what this deal ends up looking like on both sides of it. But it's wild to me just following it, because I think both sides are not taking the other side very seriously, and think that the other side is like totally delusional. And, that makes it complicated to report out like what's real with this stuff.
There will be a day where they have to reconcile that, where like the Pac-12 deal will be on the table. And if it's good enough, they'll just be like, okay, sounds good. And they'll sign it, and that'll be done. And then the next step will be, do they add somebody? Does the Big 12 add somebody from the West Coast?
Yeah.
And then they're fighting over San Diego State, which will also be interesting. But what if it's not okay, or it's not okay with everybody? That's when all of this stuff the Big 12 has been doing, and look, we all know that there's been stuff planted strictly to embarrass and destabilize the Pac-12.
No doubt.
We know that. But also, the Big 12 has done what it should do in this situation, which is keep the lines of communication open and keep saying, hey, if you want to Arizona, to Colorado, to Utah, to Arizona State. And so that if the day comes, I mean, it's really like the Dumb and Dumber thing. So you're telling me there's a chance until that deal's on the table and everybody's like, yeah, we're good with it. They're like, there's a chance.
That was my dating strategy in my 20s, by the way.
And it worked. I have seen the pictures.
If you want, I'm here.
It worked. Hey, what do we always say? The best ability is availability.
Availability. And it's not in this situation. It's not hard to sow doubt because you've got this a couple of variables here. One of them is, okay, let's say the Pac-12 can secure enough money, which obviously there are people trying to sow doubt that the money's gonna be way off, right?
Right.
But let's say the money's okay. What if it's an all streaming deal, right? Is that how detrimental is that going to be to the institutions and their student athletes? So there's that piece of it. And then naturally there's a part of this that has to get worked out at some point that we all have to acknowledge, which is Oregon and Washington are more valuable than the rest of the remaining members of the Pac-12. And are they going to want unequal revenue? Kind of makes sense on their end.
I know something about that. I did an ACC story last week. So.
Wouldn't that be reasonable in terms of the value that they bring to the conference?
Which then makes the four corner schools more likely to consider something else.
Right, because the Big 12
if that were to go happen.
Hey, we're going to be equal.
Well, so first of all, you've got to lock them into a grant of rights for the rest of the decade, right?
Yep.
And then you've got to, and then do they want more money than everybody else? Which, in talking with people in the consultant game who have no skin in the game on this one, they say you look at it, and Oregon and Washington bring more value than the median SEC or Big Ten school. Like they are they're that valuable to the certainly to the deal here for the Pac-12 and to the conference moving forward. And so. Again, these are the kind of topics that can, if you're Brad Yormark, you can keep kind of sprinkling that in and trying to make the case of the four corners like, okay, maybe the safe move is stick together, but there's going to be some problems here.
So we may see some movement. I don't know if it's going to be movement. Like you said, it doesn't look like that deal's getting done this week. But we may see some more stuff floating out because all of the ADs, all of the commissioners, all of these conferences are getting together this week. So, all those ACC schools that are fighting will be in Greensboro, and all the Big 12 schools will be plotting against the Pac-12 in Kansas City. And the Pac-12 schools will be, gathering in Las Vegas and saying, we're staying together. We love each other. And we'll see what they say. I'll be curious to see when you get all those people together, what the gossip will be.
Yeah.
Max, you're going to Kansas City.
And how much stock do you put into the denials at this time, right? When you don't have an offer in front of you.
Right. And is it just because you're trying to make the offer better, or you're trying to decide what the best solution is for this if you're the Pac-12? Because they do have multiple solutions on the table. And so
the thing about this too, guys, and I don't know, you tell me it does seem like ever since USC and UCLA bolted for the Big Ten that this was going to be an inevitability, right? So even if you get a short-term situation done financially with a deal, as we continue to move forward into the path of the Big Two, in 6, 10, 12, 14, however long it's going to be a problem again. So the thing that I continually think about when it comes to the four corners schools is, do you want to jump at the best financial situation, or do you want to jump to a place that you think has a steady, placement into the future, if a time comes where the, Oregon and Washington bolt or whatever, you want to attach yourself to something sturdier. And it's like, I might be the type of person who people think would just jump for the most money. And maybe so, depending on what it is, but I would also want to be on the sturdiest ship. And even if they both exist into the next few years, this isn't the last of this discussion. This is
No.
just going to push the boat down the line a little bit more until we have to talk about it again.
Yeah, I think you think back to August of 21, when the Pac-12, and this is an important data point in all this, the Pac-12 decided not to expand and take members from the Big 12. There's a reason why it only took the Big 12 like a week to decide, okay, we're expanding, we're adding these 4 schools. And that is because as much as like administrators do not like the anxiety, they do not like the uncertainty. I think everybody was able to move forward on that deal and add those schools because
they'd also
they just
done the
couldn't
due
have that
diligence
hanging over
with
them any longer.
With the David Boren Dog and Pony show back in 2016, what was it?
Yeah, that's right.
So they had all the dossiers on each school.
Time. Yes, they did. And so, yeah, like these Big 12 folks know, like, it is not fun living in that uncertainty. And that's what the Pac-12 is kind of dealing with right now. And the challenge for the Pac-12 is that there's, because in part because the Big 12 made those moves already, like there's not some sort of magical move out there. I think from people we've talked to, adding San Diego State and SMU dilutes the value of the Pac-12 media deal most likely. And so at least in one estimate, right? So there's not some move out there that kind of solves all the problems. There's some things you can do, but you're right, Ari. I think part of that equation there is like, do you want to move towards stability and kind of having a resolution there? And again, maybe the AD's for it, but the president's not. Like that's kind of the clash you have at some of those schools too.